Hello, my beautiful friends. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. This is Gauriye Kadam, and my guest on my channel today is someone who has been a mentor, a backbone, and a divine friend for me. Please help me welcome Natasha Mott. Natasha Mott was born in a Portuguese family in South Africa. She is a fifth generation spiritist and has a solid foundation in spiritism. Natasha's reawakening journey created an opportunity for her to shift careers from a very corporate life to embracing her deep passion for helping others. She has worked with the Akashic Records to help her navigate through the career change. Natasha studied Craniosacral Therapy from the Upledger Institute and went back to college at the age of 38 to study human anatomy. Natasha has worked with hundreds of clients, helping them make an informed decision on their lives, their relationships, their businesses, and their health. Natasha is also the founder of Raising the Vibes Academy of Consciousness, an online spiritual center that empowers people to develop their existing abilities in spirituality. It's truly an honor to welcome Natasha Mott on the episode today. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be part of this.
Thank you so much for, taking out your time. I know how super busy you are and what kind of a schedule you're maintaining. So thank you so much for being a part of this. It's really, really an honor.
My pleasure.
So, one thing that really inspires me about you is that you're such a multifaceted being. Like, you're running an academy, you are a mentor to so many people around the world, you are a spiritual healer, you are a divine mother, a beautiful wife, a gracious daughter, an amazing daughter in law. And at the same time, you also take time out for yourself. You do your self care rituals and you go out for walks, you go out for hikes. My question to you is, how do you do it? Like, how do you manage so many things and still have that gorgeous smile on your face?
Oh, thank you. So you make me sound like a superwoman of some sort.
You are.
No, yeah, well, I try. The biggest thing for me is I follow my joy. And when you do what you love, everything falls into place. And not only that, it's kind of like you need to prioritize the things that are important to you. And you're absolutely right. My children are a priority. Family is a big priority for me, but so is self-care. So even though I'm so busy, to balance the busy, which, when you do what you love, it doesn't feel like busy. It just feels like play, right? So I need to kind of like make sure I monitor that. And I do have a self-care ritual where I actually plan, I put it into my calendar as if it were a client. So it's almost kind of like getting into that space of like, I value myself just as much as I value my clients, and that self-care is so important. And you're right, living in Calgary in Canada, we're so close to the Rocky Mountains. I love hiking. That is self-care for me. Torture for somebody else, perhaps, but I absolutely love discovering new places, new things, and nature is very big for me too. And then, yeah, the academy is just the sharing of the knowledge. I have a passion for sharing whatever knowledge I have and empowering people, giving them the tools that they need to, live the lives that they want to live, that they were born to live.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I've learned from you, and you are not someone who lives in scarcity. And this is something I've observed about you. Because every time I've come up with you for a question, be it, my education in this path, or a couple of things that I have like doubts, you immediately clear it. You don't live in that scarcity where you're like, oh no, I need to keep this information for myself. I don't need to give it out to the world. So for that, I am very, very grateful. Like, this is something that you've taught me by practicing it in your life, that I have observed and learned, that you don't live in scarcity. You immediately share the information.
Absolutely. If I have it, the thing is, I see it as the information is not mine. It's not mine to keep, right? And if my teachers had kept that from me, I wouldn't been able to share it. And it's very fascinating, especially if you start looking at all the cultures, because a lot about spirituality was kind of like held sacred and hidden from the general public. And I understand why. Times were very, very different then than what they are now. But now everybody's got access to this information. We've got access to it within us. So it's not, I don't see it as mine to keep, right? It belongs to everyone.
Absolutely. And this is, like I said again, this is something I've learned from you, that if you have the information, spread it so more people can get awakened, and people can choose whatever path they want to choose spiritually, because there is not one path towards spirituality. So anything that allows them to access their soul's blueprint, and let them go ahead and let them do that. So for that, I'm very, very grateful. You've taught me this.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad.
So diving right in, and like this is something you've shared your story with me so many times. You were working in marketing, had a very corporate lifestyle. You worked in IT. My question to you is, how did you step into the spiritual side? Like, what was that moment in your life when you knew that something was missing, and this is the path that I need to take?
That's a very good question. So, I'm fifth generation of family that's been into spirituality. So, spirituality for me, or the philosophy of spirituality for me, has always been part of my growth. It's always been part of my world. In that sense, not only spirituality, I also grew up in South Africa, a Portuguese family. There's the Christian Catholic kind of influence, absolutely. And my mom would send us to Sunday school as well, just so that we had some sort of an instruction within religion. But there was always that spiritual element behind understanding, knowing that there's something beyond. So I've always been very, very spiritual. But back then, and I'm talking 30 years ago, a little bit more, give or take, it was very much something that wasn't spoken about. It was something that was hidden. It was something that, it just wasn't as open as it is now. So thank goodness that we are all sharing information now, because, it helps so many people. Not only that, I think we're getting to that stage of asking what else is there. But never thinking I could live spirituality as a way of life. Yeah, I got thrown into the corporate world, fell into it purely by accident. And yeah, I ended up working for some very, very technical internet service provider companies, or IPTV Solutions was another company that I worked for. But it started getting to a stage where I moved from Edinburgh, that I lived in Scotland for a little while, to Canada. And it just got to a stage where life became very, very difficult. I found it hard to adjust being in Canada, even though people are super, super friendly, especially where I am, is very much oil and gas based. And they had a very different philosophy to marketing at that time. So I found it hard to find work. And then I went through quite a bit of a turmoil in, found workplace bullying, and all the rest of that. It started affecting my physical body. And that's when I started relying on my spiritual tools to actually bring balance back into my life, because I was nearing burnout, right? I was nearing that space of kind of like, it was affecting me physically. I mean, I broke my leg in 5 places. For those of us in the spiritual world, especially, legs are all about moving forward. A resistance to moving forward is breaking a limb. And I made damn sure I did that properly, because I broke it in 5 places. I needed to have an operation. I was out for 6 months. My timing was absolutely perfect. It coincided with the World Cup soccer, or football, as they call it in the UK. So I tried to watch a lot of the games while I was recovering. We start throwing things into our lives that kind of like, we redirect our lives to follow the next set of passion and purpose. That's how I fell back into it again. So it was almost kind of like, a lot of us go through an awakening. I went through a snooze period because I was already awakened, right? So I just hit the snooze button for a little bit. And, kind of like, and snoozing is really the right word for it, because my spiritual philosophy was still there. Once in a while, I'd pop in, especially in the UK. I hit the snooze in the UK because I didn't have my family to support me. And I was seeing a lot of things, being totally open. It kind of freaked me out a little bit. Yeah, so hitting the snooze button kind of like helped me to like block my ears and close my eyes for a little bit. But when we snooze, we're always kind of like, we know that something's there, right? But going into the healing aspect completely immersed me back in to that. And then I thought, okay, how can I help others? And that's where the journey really started. And I did Reiki, and then I did craniosacral therapy, because I'm also very statistical. Fun fact, I love cricket. I did cricket scoring when I was younger. The statistics absolutely fascinate me, especially when it comes closer to the end of the game, because it's like, who's going to win? And then statistically, it's all there. And that's what makes it exciting for me. But, so I started getting into that. And then I thought, okay, now how do I share this knowledge? How do I empower people to do their own healing? Right. And that's why I started kind of like teaching and sharing that knowledge as well.
That's very interesting when you say the entire, like when you have shared the entire journey. And I do understand that many people go through this when they are, somehow getting awakened, or they are awakened and then they hit the snooze button. Because I went through a similar kind of a journey where I also hit the snooze button for about 3 years in my life. It's overwhelming when you actually start off on the spiritual path, because you see so many things. The texts say something, but practically it's something else. So it's really overwhelming. And you are kind of an inspiration for me in that, like, even though it's overwhelming, just keep going. It's one step at a time. Just keep moving forward. It's going to get easier, because it is overwhelming. It is hard. It is scary. But on the other side of it, there's just this beautiful light, which is ready to welcome you.
Absolutely. I had this interesting experience. Last October, I ended up going out to Ontario. I was very lucky to be invited by a lady that does quantum healing. She lives on the reservation. She has this amazing, beautiful healing center. And they were taking a whole bunch of students through creating a sweat lodge, but the academic side behind it, the spiritual side behind it. And then we actually got to build it. Like, we actually got to go out into the forest, cut down the trees to actually build it. And it was interesting because I was sweeping the leaves from the space where we were going to build the lodge. And there was a lot, because it was kind of autumn or fall, there was a lot of leaves that were on the ground. So I was raking these leaves, and I managed to get the majority onto the side. And then there were few that the wind came and they blew into it. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is never going to. But in the same instant, they almost gave me a lesson. And they said, at the beginning, when we're first raking, it's heavy. There's a lot to rake. We're doing all the heavy lifting at the beginning. But then when the wind comes in and there's another little trauma, or there's a little, shadow or a trigger that comes in, because you've done the bulk of the work at the beginning, those leaves are easier to spot and easier to clean up straight away. So there's not so much, the heavy lifting is really at the beginning. And the wind will never stop blowing the leaves. It just becomes easier because, and then there's that gratitude of like, oh, that's, yet something else that doesn't need to be there anymore. So it was quite a fascinating, and that really stuck with me. Something as simple as raking leaves, the message in that was just like, wow. Yeah, it's quite a magical place that my friend Diane Hill has over there. But yeah, and that's just the same as life. Do the hard work. The hard work's in the beginning, the heavy lifting. But it's like anything. Like when we go to the gym, the hardest time is the beginning. But once we get into that role, taking it day by day, it makes it a lot, I wouldn't say easier, but we work through things a little bit faster.
I think that is so true. And when you're explaining that in a metaphorical way, I see that in the Akashic Records. Every time we visit the records, there's something else. What is not in my highest and greatest purpose? And you're immediately shown the contracts, deals, or agreements. So, my question, leading on to the next question, what are the Akashic Records and how did you come across this healing modality?
So the Akashic Records are one of my favorite subjects. I like to refer to the Akashic Records as the Google of the spiritual world. So much more than Google. It will host every program that's ever been created. If we start looking at the technical side, I'll bring out a little bit of my techie. Every program that has been created is created and will be created. Anything that you can think of that has been, is now, and will forever be is completely recorded in this kind of like spiritual database. And sometimes it's called the matrix, where it's kind of like every thought, action you've ever had since the dawn of your creation is recorded in this matrix. And the amazing thing is that there's no judgment. It just is what it is. So all your past lives, if you were entertained past lives, all your future lives, all your present opportunities and possibilities are all recorded. And there's not just one avenue. Every time we make a decision, a whole bunch of new opportunities show up for us based on that decision that us is choosing to go. So it's not that we're kind of like mapped out and this is our lives, which is quite interesting, because when my clients come to see me, especially when we're looking at future possibilities, because all those possibilities exist, I can look into every single thread and see what's in the alignment, what's best for you. And the amazing thing about the Akashic Records is that they provide background information to help you make informed decisions based on the map or the blueprint that your soul has created for this incarnation. So for me, it's like a total cheat when we're looking at that. So every phobia you have, every worry, every fear is based somewhere. Sometimes it's not even ours. Sometimes it's an ancestral lineage thing, but it's all recorded. And even though it's recorded, when we're in a session or when you're accessing your own records, it's only what is relevant to you in that moment that will surface. Because some people have this fear of like, oh, what's in there? I don't want to know that I died X, Y, and Z way. You won't be shown that. You'll only be shown what you can handle. And for me, we use the same neural pathways as when we're meditating. So we're actually connecting with our subconscious mind to the records, which exist everywhere in all dimensions, through all time, through all space. So it's really getting into that kind of like alpha kind of like phase of mind, making the subconscious conscious. And that's exactly what we're doing when we're connecting to the records. And because they hold so much knowledge, we tend to, as humans, equate knowledge with books, scrolls, and all the rest of that. But it's not to say that when you access your record, you're necessarily going to get into a library. You could land wherever. So there's that myth that it's only about libraries and books. No, you can sometimes go directly into a past lifetime that's influencing this lifetime. They're just this array of like information that is available to us based on our soul. And who doesn't want to know more about themselves and why they're here? It's the biggest questions. Who are we? Why are we here? And where have I come from? Those are the top 3 questions. And the Akashic Records helps us to access that.
My clients, when they come my way, that's one of the first questions they ask, like, what is my purpose? What am I doing here? And what am I doing wrong? How do I correct it? These are the first 3 questions that are immediately asked in the records. And like you said, why not ask these questions when you have this cheat, when you can actually modify or if understand what are the patterns that are derailing you from your path and stepping into your purpose? What is it that's stopping you? So absolutely. Leading on to the next question, how did you get into this healing modality?
Not that I believe that there are ever any accidents, but I was with a friend of mine, Kim Wirch, and we did Reiki together through the university here in Calgary. And she was hosting this lady that was coming from Vancouver called Teza. And Teza was talking about the Akashic Records. There was an event that came up and I had never heard of it. And I was like, for some reason, I needed to be there. And it was part of my kind of like reawakening aspect of it. And when I was younger, I used to do a lot of automatic writing. So that's how I used to actually bring the voice of spirit across. So it was actually really written, even though I could see and hear. But when I attended that class, tapping into the Akashic Records, so it was a weekend, not only was it very healing for me because the vibrational frequency of just being in your records can be quite healing, but it started to reawaken those neural pathways that I used to use. So I automatically, a lot started coming through. So I started seeing a lot. I started kind of like hearing, and the information started coming back. It's muscle memory as well. So that kind of like started opening up. And then I used it as a tool to help myself at the beginning, because I've always been curious. Why? I must have annoyed my parents. But if I understood the reason why behind something, especially if my mom was like, no, you can't go out on Saturday night. Why? Kind of a thing. If she could explain to me in a way that I understood and it made sense for me, I'd be like, okay. Sometimes I would still push that boundary, which I still do, and then go, okay, maybe I should have listened. And I do that still today. The Akashic Records gave me the why, all the background information, or the various possibilities of why something is the way it is. And the amazing thing is, I chose it. Why did I choose this situation? Some of us think, why would I ever choose that? The question is, what am I learning from it? Right? So that aspect helped me to go through that reawakening phase, which can sometimes be quite painful, right? Like I was switching careers at that time, right? I had worked so hard. I was like managing like teams across Europe, and I got here and I had to intern, right? So it was just kind of like, and I was very angry at the time. I was like, this is where my career's come to die. So dramatic. But no, I had actually placed that switch in my life because I got everything that I needed from my corporate career, because now I use the corporate to help with business within the Akashic Records. So it's never a waste. We're always on purpose, always, which is a big question. And yeah, so it helped me to shift and to learn. But the understanding why did I buy this house and then I had to leave my job? Like, how are we going to do this? Why did I marry my husband? What have I promised my children? Those things all help me to do my own healing. Because the other thing is, sometimes if you understand why somebody is a jerk, or why you keep dating the same kind of type of jerk person over and over again, it's a pattern. Why did I create that? Right? Where is the soul growth in that? So that helped me as well, which is why when I'm with my students, I'm like, question everything. If it doesn't resonate, question. Don't understand, question. If you think, oh, could I try this? Do it. There's no restrictions. And then if it doesn't work out, then you have a why. Why not?
True. Because I remember in our classes, this was something that you really emphasized about. Even in the records, if you see something that does not agree with you, ask, why is this being shown to me? And then ask, who is this person who is showing this to you, person, soul, being, who are showing this to you or sharing this information with you? And then check, are they in alignment with your soul's purpose? And are they saying this out of their ego stride, or are they saying in their soul stride? So those were the things I remember you've taught us, and I still do it. I still question. If something doesn't resonate, I question it immediately. And I don't just do it in my records, I do it like personally as well.
I don't believe in, there's very few rules that I believe in.
Yeah. You've always said break every single rule. I'm all about being the rule breaker, which is something I've really admired. Because not many people do
that. Now I'm teaching that to my children now.
Brilliant. I think that's a very good lesson for kids to have at a very early age in their life. Be a rule breaker, be a why asker. And I think that is actually very brilliant, because if you start asking these questions from a very young age, you're programming yourself towards success in every area of your life, because you're not going to settle for anything that is below you or that is not in alignment with you. So that is definitely brilliant.
And it creates curiosity, right? Expands our brain, right?
Absolutely. So leading on to my next question, because I even read this in your bio, that you use the Akashic Records as wisdom to navigate your career changes, and you definitely tapped in a little bit over there. So I just want to ask you, people who are now dwelling into whether I pick this or whether I pick that, how do they use the Akashic Records to actually not only make career changes, but make big life changes? How can they use this as a healing tool to make such informed decisions moving forward?
Okay, that's a very good question. So usually when we get to that point, it's because we're stuck.
Yes.
Usually when we get to that, we've gotten to the place where I was in my career, where I was like, I cannot carry on in this direction anymore because it's just not in alignment. It's kind of like we have a big, like an accident or, to awaken us, right? When that happens, it's kind of like you can tap into the Akashic Records to find out why am I at this stage? Has this come to an end? Has this contract that I have created before being born, has the situation shown me everything? Have I learned everything from the situation? Why is this still existing? How can I be of service? So all of that starts to play in part of it in using the Akashic record. And that is always changing as well, which is why it's important. But where it comes to business, remember how I said we're always on purpose? I started having a lot of clients that started coming in and they were like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And the answers kept coming in and saying, you're always on purpose. Purpose is a windy road, right? So it's what is your next purpose? And if you look back in your life, everything connects. You got to one place, you're here because of the previous step that you took, right?
True.
So I have 15 years of marketing business experience, business to business, business to consumer. Why am I not using that? If we're always on purpose, why am I not using that? And at the time, I had a student of mine, which is no longer a student, Kellyanne Bass, and I was teaching one of the levels of Akashic Records. And she said to me, oh, are you doing a mentorship program? And I said, yes. And I was like, where did that come from? Like, I didn't even think that. That just came out of my mouth. And I was like, well, apparently I'm doing one. At the same time that we started, and she was like, so when are we starting? And I was like, I had absolutely no idea what we were going to be doing. And then she just booked a date with me. She actually okay, we're starting on this date and I'm sending you money, because we hadn't even kind of like agreed to it. So I was like, man, this is going to come from somewhere. And I was doing at the time, I was doing a course, and on a sideline course, which didn't have anything to do with Feng Shui, they presented me with the Feng Shui Bagua map. So the 9, kind of like where you place it in an area in your home and you clear it. And I was listening to this and I was thinking, this is so interesting. And then the idea came to me. I was like, with purpose coming up and doing this mentorship and business and all of this, obviously being guided by my Akashic records, I had the idea, what if we place the Feng Shui Bagua map, not on space, but energetically over our lives and our business? Because that covers every single area of our lives. And I was like, I'm going to run Kelly through this. And week by week, we started looking at one area of the Bagua map. And then it was revealed, because all those areas around the map, the central area is actually your health and joy area. And everything else fits into that. And if we don't have health and joy in our lives, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how much love you have. You can't throw any of that at love and joy if there is an issue. We started working through this, and then it was revealed that the two of us, because she's a coach as well, should actually create the methodology. And then ever since her joining in, it's kind of like turned into a method that is a book that we're in the process of publishing. It's turned into a course. But her business, within the first quarter, I think she tripled her income, and she got rid of some of the businesses that she was working with that weren't in alignment. They were just distractions. We saw the shift that happened with her. I've taken my own business through it. And every time we run an octopus method, so for example, we're running one at the moment that finishes at the end of March. We're running the actual octopus method through the octopus method. And it's constantly informing us on how to update to now. Where is our next little step that we take in our business? So anything that's everything has a record. So businesses, they're like a being, they have energy,
Yeah.
have their own Akashic records. We open up the records of the octopus method, and it's students that have been and that are to be. How are we moving forward with that? So yeah, you can use it for anything. I use it for helping people sell their homes, clearing their homes, calling in the right people, calling in the right opportunities, healing, clearing. You can even visit a planet's records, all the stuff that's happening on the planet. I was connecting to the Earth's records. What is going on? Why are there floods? Why are there tsunamis on a bigger scale? So it's fascinating work.
It is. It is very intense when you think about it. And it's also very, like you said, it's for people like me who have curiosity. You definitely are like, why? Show me. So when you go into the records, I genuinely just ask, I'm like, show me what is the purpose of this? What can be done? So definitely navigating yourself through career, through life changes, the records definitely play a huge part, not only in my life, but in my clients' life. As many clients have come my way, they've asked me many times that, Gori, I have option A and option B, which one do I take? And then I'm like, okay, let's look at both the possibilities. And then I open it up and then I see both the possibilities. Not only that, my father himself asked me when he was making the big shift, and I opened up his records and I saw, and then I understood the possibilities.
The other thing is with relationships.
Yeah.
Sometimes that is a huge thing. Not only in romantic relationships, but within family members. Is our contract complete with our spouses? Or what is that? What have we promised? What is in there? Our parents, our children. Sometimes people get into a marriage and it feels more like, father daughter. Why is that? Past lifetime, falling into old habits. And once we start understanding these kind of things, it helps us to move forward.
Which leads me on to my next question. Can anyone access their Akashic records?
So that is also another very good question. So, and I'm probably going against the grain because I believe that everyone can access their Akashic records and is sometimes accessing the Akashic records on a subconscious level without formally doing it. In the past, perhaps it was just for those that were a little bit more enlightened, those that do meditation, those that have a curiosity for it. But as a society, as we're shifting, as we're awakening, as we're growing, these type of things become more accessible to all of us. And I know in my every inch of my body that anyone and everyone to a certain capacity will access their records. I solely believe that Mozart, all those big players, Shakespeare, all those books that are channeled, they were connected to the records. They were channeling it from the collective. It's part of like the Akashic records are everywhere, and it's not somewhere you need to go to achieve them. Although sometimes it helps our minds think that we need to go to a different dimension to get it. But yeah, absolutely. Akashic records are everywhere and everyone can access them.
Which leads me on to the next question. What are the benefits of accessing your Akashic records or getting an Akashic record reading from a practitioner?
Sometimes hearing from somebody else what you already know kind of solidifies things. But the benefits of, besides the healing, the understanding, the giving you possibilities, opening up your records and just creating from your soul's blueprint, whether it be music, whether it be painting, whether it be a business plan, helps you become in alignment with and in the flow of what your soul has come to achieve. And why would you connect with somebody? Because sometimes we just need to see perspective. We need a different perspective, especially when we're stuck. It's because we're only seeing something from one perspective. We need to see something else from somewhere else. And sometimes it's a limiting belief. What is this limiting belief that we need to release, right? So where did it come from? It could have come from programming when we were kids. It could have come from a horrible teacher that didn't have patience one day and said something to you. Whatever it may be, there's the aspect of clearing energetically from the records, clearing from it physically, mentally, and emotionally. It helps. It's a massive healing aspect. It's a massive creative tool. It's absolutely limitless working with the Akashic Record. We are only limited by our own imagination. And even then, I think we've started to scratch 0.001% of what the records are. It's ever evolving. Anything that's everything will have a blueprint. The benefits are not that you need to have all of this, but for me, the benefits of, besides the healing, besides the clearing, is that the records give you information that give you a basis of making an informed decision based on what your soul wants in this lifetime. And even for us as practitioners, sometimes we go through stuff that we're a little bit too close to it. Yeah. And we need to speak to somebody else to get yet again, a different perspective to understand our situation, to understand the lessons that's there, to understand ourselves, because we've really come to experience ourselves in different scenarios.
And that is something I say to even my clients. I'm a healer, but I also take sessions from my mentors, my friends, because like you said, it's sometimes you're way too close to the subject or the situation, and it's hard to see things clearly. You do need that person or that friend or that guide to actually, share the perspective that they're seeing very clearly and they're not attached. For me, Akashic Records have been a healing path when I have taken it up and moving forward for me.
Absolutely. And the great thing is that the records they won't tell you what you have to do, and they're not judgment. They just say, these are some suggestions. And I mean, ultimately, we need to take responsibility for our actions, but they're always kind of like, this is the background information, now make the decision.
And like you always say, your life is all about the choices you've made and the choices that you keep making forward. That's something, again, that I've learned from you.
And it's not enough to just think positive. We need to action, right? Yes. So yeah, absolutely.
I mean, your thought, your feeling, and your action have to be in that right vibration, moving forward onto your trajectory, whatever is working for you.
And we're always on that trajectory. Whatever we think, fueled by our emotions, followed on by our action, gets us to where we are right now. So if we're having negative thoughts, followed by negative emotions to fuel it, followed by negative actions is what we create. So it's like we're always in charge of what we do. So I'd rather have positive thoughts fueled by excitement, carried through by action. And then I have a school that I didn't even know about at the end of a summer. Like, it's just following, being just, and it's for me, when it comes to kind of manifesting, it's being in that space of receiving or open to receiving or open to those opportunities and then grabbing them when you see them. Right. That was a big change for me, moving from the corporate world where you have to force the action, especially I was born in Africa. So in a long time ago, you have to, if you want something done, you have to force it. It's that persistence. So when I moved from corporate, having tons of action points, so it's action reaction straight away, to kind of like co-creating, not so immediate, especially at the beginning, it gets faster. The later you move on, I'm just saying, there's a little bit of hope out there, but there's that trust of being in the flow and being guided as to what is the next step. I'm not saying don't have bigger plans. Yes, we do need to have those, but we need to have the flexibility that if the course changes, that we're in alignment with that.
Absolutely. That's something I completely agree with. And that's something that even I follow when I have my clients. And I share the same wisdom that exactly you've shared, that be okay and be open to receiving new information, because not necessarily what you've thought out for yourself is the bigger picture. You need to trust that the universe has your back, and whatever is happening, trust me, is happening for your highest and greatest good, even though it doesn't feel like it in that very moment.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah. I've learned this the hard way, but yeah, now I know when I look at a couple of things in the past, I'm like, I love you for not allowing me to do that.
Yeah, even though you want it at the moment,
yes.
Yourself, your soul's like, no.
Like the other day, I was just sitting and I was so grateful. I was in that moment and I was like, just reviewing every choice and every decision I've made in the last couple of years. And I'm like, the things that did work out, I'm so grateful because that's why I'm here and I'm doing this work. But the things that did not work out, even though I prayed and I hoped, and eventually when I surrendered, this new trajectory or the new path came along my way and it just opened doors for me and I made the choice and I kept moving forward. So just looking at that path and looking at the trajectory and the choices that I've made, it's beyond my imagination. Like I wouldn't have thought this for myself. Absolutely not. Because I was in production doing my thing and now I'm doing something which is the opposite, but using the production information and the knowledge that I have accumulated over the past couple of years. So I completely resonate with your point.
That's why sometimes when we have to see something in a certain way, we're actually capping it, is what is exactly, because you could be so much more, do something so much different, right? That's more in alignment.
Yeah. My next question is, what is the best time during the day to access your Akashic records? Is there such a thing?
I no, just access them whenever. We're all so different, right? So for example, I'm a total morning person. Maybe I'm more alert, whatever it may be, but you don't really need a certain time. You can access them whenever you want. The only suggestion that I would make when accessing them, access them when you're not angry or in a bad mood, or your vibrational frequency when you're doing this work. To set up the most ideal environment is you need to be absolutely grounded, clear, and centered, because then you're not skewing the information. And the vibrational frequency of how you connect to the records is what is available to you. So for example, the higher you vibrate, and this is my theory right now, the higher you vibrate, the more there is available to you. Okay. So when we're accessing the record, we're actually vibrating at the information that is available to us, right? So that is more important than the actual time of the day. It's when are you vibrating your highest, really, more than anything else. Some people are night owls and they're more alert than, and it's not a thing of needing to be alert, but it's needing to be in that space of impartiality, grounded and centered. You can do that any time of the day.
That actually makes a lot of sense because even when I was starting out on this path, I remember I questioned myself. I'm like, okay, so which is the best time to access my records? Because when you read the Vedas and the scriptures in the Hindu religion, it says that the morning time is the purest, and there's also a particular time which is known as the Brahma Muhurat, which is extreme early time, just the time before the sunrise. And that is the purest time for you to access any information or even get into meditation. But then again, I'm not a morning person. So for me, it was always just like, all right, Gauri, you need to wake up. And the days when I do not wake up, I'd just be like, oh, I missed my chance.
Yeah, no, you can, it's just practice, and you can connect at any time of the day. And it is quite possible that for some people, that is the time of the day that works best for them. Energetically, with, the sunrise and everything. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, you can connect at any time.
Yeah. I think my dad has had this struggle with me ever since I was a kid. He's like, wake up. And I'm like, sure. Because he's a morning person just like you. He wakes up at 4 a.m. and he will do his meditation and his practices, morning rituals. And I, on the other hand, have a night ritual where I will do all of this at the night. So he's like, you're such an opposite kid.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all personalized to us now. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that actually brings a huge relief for even people who are starting out on this, because there is no such thing as the right time. And even many people who have come my way, they're like, okay, Gauri, what's the best time to meditate? I'm like, whenever you feel like it, because there is
Absolutely
no such thing as a particular time. And you've also said this during one of your class, is that meditation is when time and space disappears. So that can be when you're painting, when you're dancing, when you're working out. That is meditation for you. So there's no particular way of doing it. It's whatever works for you.
Absolutely. And some of those are those rules that I kind of like, oh, you can only meditate before the sun wakes up. No, I'm going to try it all the time and see how it works, right? That kind of a thing. So yeah, it's one of those things. And it's not to say that it's not true or to totally dismiss that. Perhaps at a point in time that would have been the best time to meditate, but things are shifting. We're becoming more conscious and more alert and more aware.
Absolutely.
And a lot of those old limiting beliefs what they probably were fine for that time, right? But not anymore. We need to shift with the times. It's not to dismiss ancient knowledge and wisdom, because there is value in that. We just need to integrate it into today's terms.
Definitely. And also, if you think about it, if you can meditate anytime during the day, you will just be at such a positive state. You will be vibrating at a higher frequency throughout the day. Let's say, for example, people who are taking bus rides or who are taking the local trains in India, I'm talking about, or even outside when they're taking public transport. Don't do this while you're behind the wheel. That is the only thing. Like, don't access anything behind the wheel. But if you're just sitting as a passenger going to work, or if you're at work and you feel overwhelmed, or even during the day when you feel anxious or overwhelmed, just completely ground yourself and take in a couple of deep breaths to completely ground yourself and just get into like a 1 or 2 minute meditation that will help you just vibrate at a higher frequency. And then you can probably access your Akashic records and ask the question as to what is happening, why is this happening? Which leads me to my next question. You've said that you've studied craniosacral therapy through the Upledger Institute and you went back to college at the age of 38. So, my question to you is, how did that feel? How did it feel to go back to college at the age of 38?
So I sat right at the front of the class because we had to do 80 hours of anatomy to support the course that I was doing for cranial. So the cranial courses are over 4 or 5 days constantly. There's a lot of theory and a lot of practice. But to support that, you have to do at least 80 hours of anatomy if you don't have a massage therapy or a physiotherapy background. I ended up going to SAIT and do night classes. So I'd, work all day. Actually, when I did my marketing degree, it was the same thing. I'd work all day. I did my marketing degree whilst being pregnant with my first child. I'd been married for over a year, but I was going to work and then going to class. No different here. The only difference is I sat right at the front of the class instead of the rebellious kid that I was at the back of the class because my hearing isn't that great. And not only that, I had this philosophy that I wasn't going to be the oldest and the dumbest in the class. I was okay with being the oldest because sometimes the teacher would be late and the guy that was opening the door thought I was the teacher because of my age. But it felt great. Like, honestly, I think the second week they opened up with the periodic table. And, I still remember thinking the last time I saw the periodic table, none of these children were probably even born yet. I think I've learned more since I've left school than I did in school. Because I did my cranial, which was a couple of years, the anatomy, and it was just like old kind of like swatting and learning. It actually felt great to actually be learning something that I enjoy. The same with the Reiki. We are always constantly learning and expanding. I always joke, I always say, it's not even a joke because that was for real. I was like, I have to pass because I can't let these kids beat me, right?
Yeah. And after you mentioned this on your website, you've also said that it's never too late to make a change. So, which is something very profound and very inspiring, that it's never too late to take that step and move forward in whichever direction that you want to go to.
Absolutely, because gone are the days where you live in the same house, in the same country, in the same job for your whole life. So we need to be able to adjust and change careers. If things aren't working, if it's affecting your health. And I started realizing I cut out to live 9 to 5, come home, make dinner, watch TV all day, do it all, like rinse and repeat. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. There's no judgment. It just isn't for me. And that's where I started looking. And now it's like I was saying earlier, like one of my things that I had to work through is being a workaholic. So if you tie the love of working with the love of what you want to do, I have to put in that family time and that self-care time because I don't feel like I work. I feel like I play. I don't know who said it, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And that's exactly what it is.
Absolutely. And now that I think about it, even I remember when I was pretty young, I remember I had this conversation with my mom and she's like, so are you applying for jobs? Because I was just graduated and everything. And I'm like, I'm not meant to be working 9 to 5. I remember I had that conversation with her at a very young age. And it's surprising how I was so clear at that time. I did not end up working 8 hours a day. I ended up working 14 or 16 hours in production. So whatever, I mean, it just turned out to be the truth. And then when I knew that, okay, that is now, reaching my exhaust point, it's time to shift careers. So it's like you said, never too late to make a change.
Never too late. Never too late. I know somebody who started running marathons at the age of 50.
Wow.
And now she travels like all over the place to run the marathon. Like that I find inspirational as well. I don't think I could run around like the couple of blocks, even though I do exercise in the morning. But like I can climb a mountain slowly, but I'll get there. So those kind of things, it's never too late. Never too late.
And I guess change is what keeps you fresh. It keeps you moving forward, because imagine you living a life that has been planned out for you for the next 50 years. You're living the same life, the same routine. It's going to get boring at the end of the day. I'm talking in my behalf, but for me, it will be super boring if I'm waking up at a certain time, doing the same thing throughout the day, and then in the evening, this is my routine, and then I hit the bed at this time. For me, it's just too overwhelming just imagining that.
But it's honoring that, right?
Yeah.
And like you say, some people find comfort in it, but that's just not for us. And that's okay.
Yeah, and that's okay. And no judgment towards the people who find that as a path of life. Absolutely. If that works for you, then keep doing that, because that is your path. That is one of your purposes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on to the next question. What is craniosacral therapy?
So craniosacral therapy is this beautiful modality that was discovered through osteopathy. So it stems from osteopathy. It's a very, very small part of osteopathy. And it was discovered by Dr. Upledger and Dr. Sutherland. And he started really working on our nervous system. And basically, Dr. Upledger discovered that there is a craniosacral rhythm. Just like we have our respiratory kind of rhythm, cardiac rhythm, like all these rhythms, that the spinal fluid actually has a rhythm. So he based this modality all around monitoring what's happening in our nervous system. And it's cranial, starting, it's kind of like it's from the top to tail, really, from your head to your sacrum. And it's really monitoring what is happening within the nervous system. But far more than that, it also looks at releasing restrictions from the body, whether it was a physical trauma or even an emotional trauma, because we tend to suppress things into our body and we hide it, we shove it in under a tissue and an organ, and then later on it becomes a disease of some sort. So craniosacral therapy helps to kind of like shift the bones, the spine, the fascia, to release any kind of restrictions that are within there. So for me, it was a very natural extension from Reiki, and kind of like working with energy in a little bit deeper. It gets more kind of like anatomical, where you drop into the body, see what's going on. If anyone from the Upledger Institute had to watch this, I actually mix it in with Akashic Records. And I love that it's probably a big no-no, but you know me and breaking rules. So I use the tools that I need to be able to do that. And not only that, the craniosacral therapy is expanding because they're looking at cranial with other modalities as well. So it's starting to expand and come forward with that. But for me, the interesting thing is even looking at our chakras and being connected to that spine and being connected to the nervous system and being connected to the records. There is absolutely, for me, when I'm on the table and I'm working or even doing distance, it helps me to look to see what our DNA is carrying from our past lives, what ailments are we carrying from a past life, and then releasing it, whether it's physical from this lifetime. And the amazing thing is as well is that our body tissue has memory. So when we are suppressing a trauma in our body with cranial, and this has happened with my physiotherapist as well, once holding on to a certain area, once you release that trauma from the tissue, some people even have memory of what it is. It's a very, very calming modality, and it helps with migraines. I actually had a friend of mine. So between the levels, I think it was between level 2 and 3 that I did. We have to do work from inside our mouth. So inner mouth work, especially this whole area. It's the avenues of self-expression. So looking at the throat chakra, if we look at it from an energetic perspective. But when we've been through a lot of trauma, especially sexual trauma, we tend to shut down this whole area. So working within opening up this area, working within the mouth area helps to open up those avenues of expression that we've suppressed. But I had to do these 25 sessions, and I had a friend of mine who had just been diagnosed with sleep apnea. And I said to him, okay, we're going to do this deal. He was like, what? I was like, you're going to come see me for 5 weeks, twice a week. You're not going to do any other modality. And then the only deal is you have to go do another test. After that. And he was like, okay. So we did it, which was like interesting, working on a healthy body at the same time was like, this is weird. But working on all of these, opening this up, doing inner mouth work, really opening this up. And then when he went for the test, I was so nervous because I was like, what if I've invested all this money and this is like not working? The other thing I was like, or what if I've invested all this money and the modality works, but I don't know how to use it, right? Anyway, he did his results and the technician was actually really surprised because his sleep apnea actually improved by 48%. So his wife was very grateful as well because she could sleep better as well. But it was kind of like one of those things that just very, very subtle, energetic work. And it's not that he was even buying into it. He was open to helping me, right? Because as healers, we really just are facilitators of the healing of the person on the table, because we can only go as far as they're willing to go, right? So cranial is this amazing, beautiful modality that helps with so many things. The somato-emotional release aspect of it is the one where we hold on to that memory, but there's some amazing work that we can do where we actually end up talking to the tissue because every organ has a vibration. And that's the amazing thing. If every organ of ours has a vibrational frequency that is ideal for it, like an orchestra, we will have our own unique sound. Because if you look at vibration, is sound is color. So we will also have our own unique color that works through that. And that's going into something else. But cranial is just this an amazing modality. Yeah, I find it gave me the statistical, the more analytical side of it, which is great.
Actually, that's very inspiring because the other day I was reading up an article about how every organ, every tissue has a different sound in your body and how it reacts to that particular sound, and how you respond to that particular sound. So, yeah, that's definitely very interesting. And definitely, we probably have to do another whole session for that, a whole interview for that. But that is very, very cool and very, very interesting. And like you said, we sometimes host traumas unknowingly in our body, even in the moment when we feel like, oh, physically we're okay, we have moved past the trauma, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, there's something still holding you back, which is, putting those limitations, those obstacles your way. And that's how you sometimes feel like, why am I not able to move forward? Which now leads me to my last question. You've written something on your website that really stood out for me. The first sentence that I read on your website is, get unstuck on your spiritual journey. So my question to you is, how can someone get unstuck on their spiritual journey? So let's say, for example, without even having access to these tools or these healing modalities, what are the first couple of things that they can do to make that shift and then get open to all these modalities that are out there for them?
Stuck is only perception, right? Yeah. We're stuck because we cannot see the solution. So really going within, like really tapping into our heart center, tapping into our intuition and asking, why am I stuck? Why can't I move forward? What is the story I'm telling myself? What am I making this mean? So really stepping into the heart space. So getting out of your head, your analytical, your ego mind, and dropping into like, I'm stuck because I don't want to move forward in this direction. That's why we're stuck, because we don't want to keep going where we're going. So by dropping into the heart center is asking, well, what do I want to do? And not only that, we're stuck because sometimes that's not the direction we're meant to go in. And then asking, like stepping into that observation of self, like, why am I reacting in this way? Why am I being triggered? What am I making it mean? Is it true? Because a lot of the times it's just a story we're telling ourselves, right? So the biggest part about being unstuck is finding out why we're stuck, what is the perception, can we change the perception by stepping into observing our actions and our reactions and getting curious about that. This is tools that we can use even out with that, but also get curious, ask, why am I going through this? What is the situation? I remember being young. Now, I grew up in South Africa at the time of apartheid. So just as Nelson Mandela was coming out of prison, just as everything was changing, I was a young teen at that time. So there was a lot that was changing, right? Plus, I had a single parent. So there was a lot to consider. And sometimes when we were going through certain things, the question was, what does this come to show me? And once I realized, what am I to learn? What am I to take out of whatever the situation is? The situation doesn't need to exist anymore because you've taken what you need from it. So energetically, it falls away. So that's a few things. So asking, what does this come to show me? Why am I experiencing this? Because I've chosen this. But that's the other thing. We need to take responsibility for our own actions in getting to where we are. Those are a few tools that one can use to step into that. And then don't be afraid. Like, give ourselves love and grace, not with judgment, because judgment doesn't take you anywhere. If a plant is withering because it's suffering, you're not going to deplete it of any more water. No, you're going to feed it. You're going to put it in the sunshine and you're going to give it what it needs to thrive. So by beating yourself up, that's not going to help. So it's like, what can I do to move forward in a direction that is in alignment with my joy? And how do you know which direction to go into? If it brings you joy and it excites you, then you know you're in the right direction. If it doesn't excite you, it's not part of your passion and your purpose. So those are things like, I don't like where I am now. What can I do to change it? And not sitting in that victim, because that doesn't help anyone.
Absolutely. I completely agree with it. And the other day I had a very interesting conversation with a common friend of ours, Colleen, and we were talking about judgment, and she said something which was a very big aha moment for me because I had not seen it in that perspective. She said that judgment starts with us first.
Oh, yeah.
Judging ourselves first before we're projecting onto someone else. And I was like, wow. So that, again, taking it back to your conversation, is that don't judge yourself in any situation that you're in, because it's there to serve your purpose in a way.
Yeah. And talking about judging others, like in South Africa, we used to say, you don't point your finger at somebody.
Yeah.
Because when you're pointing your finger, you have 3 fingers pointing back at you. Really, you have to do 3 times the work on yourself from what you're judging the other person. So they're really presenting a mirror to you. So by stepping into that observation mode, you start seeing yourself from a different perspective. Yeah, so those are my suggestions without jumping into any modality, in a very simple way of how to become unstuck. So why is it here? What does it come to show me? And what can I do to change it?
I think those are excellent beginning questions you can ask yourself whenever you are in a stuck situation moving forward, or even changing trajectories for yourself. So for that, I'm so, so grateful, Natasha. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And I know that you've had a super busy schedule and you still took out the time for this episode. So for that, I'm extremely grateful.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm grateful for being here. And thank you for letting me share my journey and my knowledge. And I hope it was helpful.
I think it definitely was. And I am going to leave it up to the viewers to get in touch with you. All of Natasha's information and her details are in the comment section below. So if you want to reach out to her, you can reach out to her through her Instagram or her website. And it's all down in the comment section below.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to answer any questions and for people to reach out, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much, guys, for being a part of this episode. It was very informational for me, and I really hope it did the same or even made a bigger impact in your life. And if you're asking the question, if you're asking the why, then I guess you are almost there, and then the path starts revealing itself to you. So thank you so much for being a part of this episode. If you liked it, and if you want more such conscious content coming your way, then please do hit the like, share, and subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the bell icon, and you will be constantly updated. Until next time, have a blessed week ahead. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.